Give the floor to the Prime Minister for his 7-minute speech.
7 minutes?
Yeah.
This House supports freedom of speech within certain limitations, because every action has an opposite reaction as well, whether we want to accept it or not. And we can say that by giving specific examples and sort of a few things. When we say something, it may not be taken as we want it to be said, or it may be seen as a little different. And we have to think of others when we say what we say, depending whether we expect good reaction, bad reaction. We have to take others' beliefs, others' basic thoughts into we have to think about it as well, but kind of take into consideration, because we don't want to limit ourselves to just saying everything's politically correct, but we also want to have limitations on freedom of speech. We don't want to be able to say just whatever we want and go about it that way. And so what we really want to do is not stifle out creativity. We don't want to stifle out someone's ability to say what they feel, but we want to kind of look at it. So as the Charlie Hebdo attack, as an example here, they were giving specific threats. They were given a chance and kind of given multiple threats. It wasn't just, oh, we made a joke. And while it was a lot harder joke, it was a depiction of someone's Messiah, their God. And it was, like I said, while it was a joke, they were playing with fire. They were given specific threats numerous times to not do this, to not depict Muhammad, to not offend in this harshly of an environment. So we have a situation where, yes, someone was given freedom of speech. We do have that right. We do have that we do have that ability to say what we feel, but we also have to accept that there are consequences to what we say. And these threats, these jokes, these everything, they have a backlash. They have consequences. So while we do think, yeah, it's just a joke, it's against something, they should just take it as is. So we want to change people. We want to change the way people think and allow things like this to happen. But we cannot do that by attacking the extremes. We cannot go to the top end of the chart and work our way down to change minds, because it will not work. What we will end up doing is giving more fuel to the extremists by saying, we made this joke, we didn't respect their religion, we didn't respect their thoughts, we didn't respect them as a person. So the extremists now have fuel to say, because they do not respect us, they do not respect our God, our religion, our way of life, our culture. The extremists can use that against us to say, well, they don't care about you, they don't care about who you are, they want to change you, make them like you. And so what we do is we have to work our way up from the bottom, not start from the top. We go from the bottom and change minds from there. That way we choke out the recruitment ability of the extremists. Because if you have no recruitment, you have no more extremists down the road. It's not a sudden change of no more extremists. It's a change of gradually over time we stifle out those that are extreme, that have these extreme values and cause harm to not only themselves but others. And so going back to sort of the second point, when we have these jokes like this, we give fuel back to these extremists. So it's consequences, and we have to accept that. So the joke they had, like I said, while it was lighthearted, it was the depiction of their God. They were playing with fire, even though they were given threats. They were given the opportunity to limit what they were saying. down to a respectable level within certain boundaries. So what we really want to do, we want to give people freedom of speech, but we want to make people express that within certain limitations and with people. So the aftermath of all of this will be explained by my colleague, Mr. Nicky, who will kind of explain further on the aftermath of the situation. So that's kind of the real basis of what we want to do. We just want to make people more aware and kind of make people think before they say things, whether they are meant to offend, whether they're meant to assist in improving an idea. We want to make people think before they say everything, because everything has a reaction. You know, for every reaction, there's opposite and opposing reaction. And sometimes it's more than what we want. So if we keep things in mind, we can limit negative backlash in some aspects. So that's kind of our stance.
Okay, all set? Okay, thank you very much for your speech. Now we're not making my life very easy here. I guess I'll have to be the one who will set the status quo. Your member of parliament was trying to point that out to you. So this house does not regret, obviously, ridiculing Mohammad in the light of the Charlie Hebdo shooting and the massive Muslim backlash. And since it is up to me to set the status quo, I will point out that we speak in the name of the government of France, and we do not regret this. First of all, because we are a democratic government, and we believe that the freedom of speech is one of the pillars of democracy. You cannot limit freedom of speech, because if you start limiting freedom of speech, then this is on very thin ice. You're walking on very thin ice. By limiting freedom of speech, you obviously have to limit many more rights, and therefore you will have reduced democracy. No, thank you. I will get to speak in a moment. Now, you say that they depicted the Messiah of Islam and the God of Islam. Actually, no. Muhammad is not the Messiah. Muhammad is not the God of Islam. Muhammad is the Prophet, simply the Prophet of Islam. And one thing I want to tell you, one thing is that if there are many caricatures, they don't only depict Muslims. Caricatures depict Jews. Caricatures depict Christians. This is an expression of the freedom of speech, and they're not meant to offend. Now, if Muslims feel offended by this, this is one thing. However, we believe that they're just looking for an excuse. Sorry, I'll just make my point, and I'll give you the word I promised. Now, Muslims are just looking for an excuse to carry on attacks. Were there caricatures before 9/11? Were there caricatures before other terrorist attacks? What about the attacks of Boko Haram? What about other Muslim terrorists who have instigated attacks against the Western values and the Western society? No, I'll tell you, caricatures are just an excuse, and the attack has been carried out by two people who are not even good Muslims. According to their lawyer, they were drinking, they were taking drugs, they were not going to the mosque, they were not even praying. However, these attacks were carried out in the name of Islam. How can people who do not follow the rules and the principles of Islam kill in the name of their prophet? Obviously, this is just an excuse. Maybe they've been funded by a terrorist organization, which is Al-Qaeda in the Arab Peninsula. This organization obviously claimed that it was they who had supported them. Maybe they did it for money, but they certainly did not do it for Islam. They did not do it for their faith. So we cannot stress this more. We do not regret the ridiculing of Muhammad, because one thing, it is freedom of speech. Then on the other hand, It is an expression of our Western values. It is an expression of our... Okay, go ahead.
Okay, but we do have limitation of freedom of speech in our world as well. We don't have the same thing about slander. Why Muslim radicals need that excuse? Why do they need that excuse? Why they just don't bomb stuff?
Okay, as I previously said, there have been many instances of Muslims who have carried out bombing attacks, and 9/11 is the biggest example of this. There have been no caricatures prior to 9/11, and yet again they have bombed stuff. They have bombed stuff time and time again. They have bombed Christians, they have bombed churches, they have killed numerous people, and yet again you see that there is numerous examples of cases where they have never needed.
In the interview that was given by Osama bin Laden, what was the reasons, what was the pretext for the 9/11 bombings?
Actually, this interview given by Osama bin Laden is a farce. Oh, I don't believe personally that Osama bin Laden stands behind this, and I'll tell you why. So Al Qaeda was the first to reject their participation in the 9/11 bombings, and 1 month later they were there to take responsibility for this. What is the reason for this? What is the reason? Obviously, none. So we have to stress this more. The massive Muslim backlash is not against the caricatures. The massive Muslim backlash is because the radical Islams who practice fundamental radical Islam have waged a war against Western values. They have waged a war against the West. They have waged a war against Christianity. And caricatures or no caricatures, they'll always find pretext, they'll always find the reason to wage their war and to carry on with their message, because this is what Muslim and Islamic fundamentalism is all about. If it's not caricatures, it will be something else, and you can rest assured. What do you think would happen if there are no more caricatures? Do you think that the attacks will stop and these radical Muslims will stop being radicals? Do you think that just the absence of caricatures will make them peaceful citizens of their country? Do you think that ISIS will give the land back to the people, to Syrians and Iraqis, and they will invite all the immigrants to come back to their homes and live peaceful lives, and they will reconstruct their houses? Do you think that this will happen just because there will be no caricatures? No, actually, Muslims are the biggest victims of ISIS. It's not Christians, it's Muslims who are the biggest victim of ISIS. And obviously, this will not stop. This will not stop. This is a problem that has to be tackled from the core. Yes, please.
Why do Muslims join ISIS if they are acting so much against the haters of other Muslims? And what's the incentive? How they make people, and what's the thing that fire people up to join organizations as ISIS and Al Qaeda?
The reason is against Islamic fundamentalism, and the reason is because of Islam and because of radical Islam. ISIS is a Sunni doctrine, while they are against every other person, regardless of whether he is Christian or Muslim, who does not follow their way of Islam. They're against Shia Muslims as well, and this is why they're in a war against the Iraqi government of Nouri al-Maliki. This is why they're in a war with Hezbollah. This is why they're in a war with Iran, and therefore this is what they're after. They're after our ideals, they're after our society, and therefore we have to stand united. We have to support our Western liberal values. We have to support our freedom of speech, and this is how we will thrive, and this is how we will eventually have the strength and the capabilities to retaliate in a peaceful way. We don't seek vengeance, we don't seek peaceful retaliation, as the last edition of Charlie Hebdo depicted. It was the Prophet Muhammad who said, "Tu et pardonne," or everything is forgiven. Peace be sure.
Let's be blunt about it and summarize what we have been speaking about and what the government side of the House has been speaking about. What we told you is that within a democratic society, which is so obvious, and we didn't comment on that because we already know that we are within a democratic society, there are certain limitations of rights. There are certain limitations, and we need to be reasonable. We need to use our brains, and before we speak, we should take in mind the consequences. So what the Prime Minister told you, and well, it wasn't really refuted. Well, when you speak, and within a democratic liberal society, well, there is a thing of called slander, and if you offend someone, if you speak the untruth about someone else, well, there will be a war case and there will be consequences, so your freedom of speech is limited. So we did have that precedent already in our society. But, you know, should we limit and should we regret about comics? Should we? The thing is, and what the Prime Minister was saying is, you know, if it was that, if this was something great as the treaties of government or something like that, yeah, okay, go for it, we are going to take risks. But that's childish game. They may pretend that there is a deeper meaning behind that comics. They may pretend whatever they want, but at the end of the day, it's people playing jokes on a religion. And don't go into some kind of theories, etc. They knew what's going to happen. They knew that there is risk. And should we take that risk? That's the question that we should consider today. And that's what I'm going to speak about. Within a reasonable world, what are the consequences and why the radicals need us to provoke them? Why the radicals are getting stronger by us provoking them? So let's start with that. How does radicalism work? You're not born a radical. You need something to oppose. You need something to stand against. And basically, by creating examples as Charlie Hebdo, as a lot of things in our culture, we're just giving an excuse. And you were perfectly right at saying this is just an excuse. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But the thing is that by being an excuse, they're using that excuse to radicalize other people. And that's how their recruitment system works. Because if they don't have this, they wouldn't have the excuse for bombing it. And normal Muslim people wouldn't join Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or whatever else. Because the majority of Muslims are, I agree with you, peaceful. That's 1.5 billion religion. If 4 of them were violent, well, we were fucked up. I mean, we don't need to have that debate. If Islam by itself was violent, that debate wouldn't be standing because they would have won us already. So, by giving them such excuses, as Charlie Hebdo, we're just making things work. And that leads me to the other argument. What is going to be the aftermath of the Charlie Hebdo? Yes, something terrible happened. 12 people were killed over there, and after that, more. But the worst is going to happen now. Because how this is going to work? What was the mechanism of radicalism I have been speaking about? What is going to happen in France and throughout Europe? First, this is going to empower the nationalists. And already, the Marine Le Pen party in France, the French nationalists, are gaining power. They are going to get more powerful. They are going to get more votes. You are going to get more Christian people being scared when they see Muslims. Because, you know, Muslim countries, we don't make any difference between the Muslims. They blow stuff. They kill people. So that's the reaction you are going to get from Muslims. We're going to get defensive. And what next? Well, they are going to get defensive. Because we're going to be jerks with them. And that's pretty much normal. When you are being jerked to someone, he will be jerked to you. So that's the vicious circle that the opposition is trying to get us in. And Mr. Speaker, I am against it. I am against that, and I regret about the depictions of Mohammed. We didn't need it. Why do we need it? Is it something great? And is it something like that we haven't had throughout history? Is it going to change history? No. The Prime Minister already told you, when you want to change something, if we consider like the normal change management policies, we don't start with the radicals. We cannot change them. We cannot go to a football ultras or something and like change them and make him a better man. They are not like that because they're Muslim. No, they're those jerks. The thing is, the way you change stuff is by marginalizing those people, by acting and working with the moderates. And we're not doing that. Because when someone offends your religion, you're going to act on that. Like, I don't know if you know, but Pope Francis said the other day, yeah, I'm going to take the UN. You know what Pope Francis said the other day?
Yeah, that they shouldn't reproduce like rabbits.
No, I'm going to think.
Okay, I just want to say something else. Why we know that there have been depictions by Charlie Hebdo of other religions. There have been depictions even of the Holocaust. Why
Thank
Thank
you so much. So first let me quote Pope Francis, and then I'm going to answer to his question, and I'm going to give an example of Charlie Hebdo being censored because of depictions of other religions, and that religion being the, like, how do you call Jews? I mean, like their religion. Okay. So first off, it was Pope Francis saying, if you speak bad about my religion, if you speak bad about my mother, I'm going to punch you. So, like religion, family, etc., those are all sensitive topics, and people tend to be emotional on them. So we know that something bad is going to happen when we do something like that. It's going to happen about Christianity, and we can see terrorism of Christians in the United States, for example, with the examples of the pro-life movement and then blowing up clinics because it's against their religion. Yeah, that's horrible. You know, that happens. It's normal. We can avoid some stuff. I mean, we cannot avoid abortion because that's like important, but we can avoid drawing some stupid pictures. So, about your question, 2 years ago, I think it was 2010, so that's 5 years ago, but when Jean Sarkozy, the son of the ex-French president, was getting married, he got married to a really rich Jewish woman. And Charlie Hebdo, of course, got a comment for that, saying, hey, this young man knows the way. It isn't that, even you don't have God naked or something. It was like a crude and subtle joke on like the Jewish being more successful, and that was censored. That caricature was taken off the limit. That caricature was taken. So we do find that as a double standard. By all means, what we told you today, we told you that we have already a lot of examples, even within Charlie Hebdo, with what I just told you, of freedom of speech being limited when it's reasonable. We know that this is going to have only negative effects. We know that this is going to empower the movements as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, or Abu Haram. So, ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to propose the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would actually want to begin by helping the government get their definition straight. I'd like to define freedom of speech for the government, since they seem to forget what exactly is. Indeed, freedom of speech means that you can say anything and express yourself in any way you see fit to decide. That means that whatever you say, you will not be punished by the state, and this distinction is very important, by the state for what you have done. So there will be no arbitrary power exercised over your freedom of expression. Now, indeed, as the government said, there are limitations. You can get sued for slander, that's true. You can have somebody write you a nasty letter. Of course, freedom of speech entails certain consequences and responsibilities. But it does not entail murder at the hands of two criminals, as it happened to our poor friends at Charlie. This is a political message that these terrorists sent, and they deliberately chose such an expressive target because they want to send us a message that our way of life is not okay with them, and they want to kill us all and destroy us all. Now, the government mentioned recruitment many times. I'll just say my thing and take some questions. The government mentioned recruitment many times. Well, here's the thing. By expressing our freedom of speech, we're not going to increase or decrease recruitment of these organizations. Recruitment of these organizations happens for completely other reasons. These reasons include economic neglect, disenfranchisement of young people. As the Prime Minister mentioned, these young people were actually using drugs and alcohol, they were not religiously devoted. They were not proper Muslims. They were simply criminals, simply outcasts from society that decided to choose some ideology and go murder 13 people. And we can't give in to that sort of thing. If we indeed start censoring from the point of view of the state, start censoring our own media, no matter how tasteless it might be, because I share the opinion that sometimes these caricatures from Charlie Hebdo are tasteless. But God forbid that we live in a country where the government decides what is tasteful and what is not. That's for the market to decide. Now, if you do grant, I will say my thing and let you know. If we do grant the censorship, guess what's going to happen? Exactly what you said. The far right will win. This is what the far right wants. This is why the far right was the first to actually speak on this issue and call for censorship. If we give up our principles simply from the fear that there might be a certain backlash, then we don't have any principles at all. Principles are there because they're not movable. We need to defend them. We need to defend them with force sometimes. And the principle of freedom of speech is this. No group, no matter Christians, Muslims, communists, far-right, socialists, can be excluded from the process of freedom of expression. No group can have a privileged position because they're somehow more sensitive than another group. And if the Jews did not even have a massive backlash after the caricature you mentioned, but it came from the president, then this is something else. This is a case of possibly corruption and suppression. I'll let you answer more. Possibly corruption and suppression, but you did not see a massive uprising of Jewish population in France. Just Charlie Hebdo has in many cases published caricatures that criticize Christians and the Pope. You did not see a massive Catholic uprising. Simply because of a certain type of population has decided to uprise does not mean that we should cave into these demands. No group and no symbol, religious or political, can be excluded from the freedom of speech. That defeats the whole purpose of freedom of speech. Yes?
Mr. Speaker, he's speaking about censorship from the government, but what we are having this debate about is putting the moral label on what happened and the caricatures themselves. Do you think that the caricatures made our world in any way better?
I'd imagine the caricatures made our world better because it made quite a few people laugh. I should hope so. I hope it caused more laughs than anger. Here's the thing, the moral label here is clear. The murderers are the ones that are immoral. And our morality, our liberal morality entails that we must protect freedom of speech. Our famous quote is, "I do not agree with you, but I will die defending your right to say what you said." This is part of our morality. And if the government is not aware of that, well, it speaks to their confidence. I'd like to address something else the government said. The government said that the Charlie Hebdo caricaturists had it coming. That it was obvious that they would get somehow attacked or killed because, oh, look how sharply they use their caricatures and how fiery their humor is. Mr. Speaker, this is nonsense. That's like saying, oh, a bank should have been expected to be robbed. Look how much money it has in its vaults. It's ridiculous. It does not work that way, I'm sorry. Yes?
Yeah, but that was a great example. But wouldn't it be more likely to make an example with the school bully and making fun of him and basically irritating the school bully?
And what do you propose that we do about the school bully? Do we start punishing the kids that make fun of the school bully instead of punishing the school bully? Or trying to work with the school bully? I agree, these terrorists were not proper Muslims and we should work with the Muslim moderates. But at the end of the day, those Muslim moderates have to accept that if they are true moderates, such things will not bother them. They will probably cause them to laugh. They will isolate those extremists. Yes?
If there are two models, they should accept our values, our world, and whatever we know, right?
Exactly, because
Okay.
if they chose to be French citizens, they have put their signature under the French Constitution and the French laws, which supersede all religious beliefs and all laws. If they want to be Frenchmen, this is the way they will behave. France is a secular state. No religion has any privileges over another, and hopefully it will never will. And this is the law that dominates France. They're welcome to leave France and become part of ISIS or whatever they want if they so believe, but they will not be we will not tolerate them to shoot other citizens. And the right position here is not to accommodate these murders, because you will invite more murders and you will have sacrificed your values for nothing. The right position here is to have a strong hit against the terrorists. And I think the other ones.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to stress again that we support Western liberal values and democracy. If we start limiting our values, this will actually lead to what the terrorists are trying to do. This is what terrorism means, this is what terror implies. Terror implies that they wreak fear in our lives, that they cause fear in our values, in our minds, that we're afraid to go out, we're afraid to express our freedoms, we're afraid to express ourselves, what's on our mind. So here, this is where they win. This is where terrorists win, and this is, as my colleague pointed out, this is where the radical right wins. If we succumb to their wishes, they are the winners, and those people at Charlie Hebdo will have died for nothing. Do you think that they would want us to limit the freedom of speech? Do you think that this is what they died for? Do you think that their lives are worth nothing? Obviously not, and my colleague pointed this out clearly. We have to continue with our liberal values. We have to continue with our rights and our will to express ourselves. We are not attacking Islam. This is not an attack against Islam. By expressing ourselves, we point to many different religions: Christianity, Jews, Muslims, political figures, and yet again, you never see a backlash from any one of them. Censorship does not entail murder. Censorship and what's more, you speak of slander. Well, how can there be slander against somebody who there is no proof that has ever lived in this world? Slander is not enough, and it's not an excuse for murder, and there will never be a backlash of any other religious entity, neither Jews, neither Christians. So, what is this all about? The recruitment of these criminals has started way before any caricatures have ever appeared. These people, as my colleague also pointed out, have been outcast from the society. They have been outcast, and they have joined the radical forces because they have not incorporated and integrated into our Western